Something interesting is happening among men in their 40s and 50s right now, and it doesn't get talked about honestly very often. A significant and growing number of them are single. Not accidentally single, not still looking single, but deliberately, consciously, often quite contentedly single. They have full lives, meaningful work, good friendships, genuine peace. And when the topic of relationships comes up, their response isn't bitterness or complaint. It's something quieter. Something that looks a lot like a considered decision. Now, there are two very easy ways to interpret this. The first is to dismiss it. These men are damaged, or avoidant, or afraid of commitment. The second is to celebrate it uncritically. They've figured out the game and they're winning. Both of those interpretations miss what's actually interesting. Because the real question, the one worth sitting with, is, what are the actual forces driving this? What does it tell us about modern relationships, about how men experience them, and about what it takes to build something genuinely lasting? That's what we're exploring today. Honestly, carefully, and without the score settling that usually derails these conversations. This is Aphorism Archive. Let's get into it. Reason 1. They've recalibrated what a relationship costs. The first reason is perhaps the most fundamental, and it starts with a shift in how older men do a very basic kind of personal accounting. In your 20s, the desire for partnership is often so strong, and the experience of what partnership actually demands is so limited, that almost any potential relationship seems worth pursuing. You're optimistic by default. You haven't yet accumulated the evidence that would make you more selective. By your 40s, that calculation has changed. You've been in relationships. You know what they cost, not just financially, though that's real, but emotionally, temporally, energetically. You know what it feels like to invest deeply in something that doesn't work. And you've developed, sometimes painfully, a clearer sense of what you actually need from a partner versus what you'd simply settle for to avoid being alone. Behavioral economists have a concept called loss aversion, the well-documented tendency for people to feel losses more acutely than equivalent gains. Research by Daniel Kahneman and Amos Tversky found that losing something feels roughly twice as painful as gaining the equivalent thing feels good. For men who've experienced significant relationship loss, a divorce, a long partnership that ended badly, the slow erosion of something they once valued, this psychological reality becomes very concrete. The threshold for this is worth the risk gets higher. Not irrationally high. Just honest. This isn't fear. It's the application of experience to decision-making. And a man who says, I need to see genuine compatibility before I invest isn't broken. He's learned something real. Reason 2, the peace is real, and they're protecting it. This second reason is one that's genuinely hard to explain to someone who hasn't experienced it, but almost instantly recognizable to someone who has. At a certain point in a man's life, usually after years of building, striving, managing external demands, and navigating the emotional complexity of relationships, something clicks. He gets his life into a shape that actually works. His home is ordered. His schedule reflects his values. His emotional world is calm. And he realizes, often for the first time, that this quiet, this stability, this predictability, is something he actively wants to protect. Positive psychologist Mihai Csikszentmihalyi spent decades studying what he called optimal experience, the conditions under which people feel most alive, most engaged, most genuinely satisfied. One of his consistent findings was that autonomy, the sense of directing your own life according to your own values, is one of the most powerful contributors to sustained well-being. Not excitement. Not novelty. Autonomy. For men who've built that kind of life and then experienced relationships that disrupted it, relationships characterized by chronic conflict, emotional unpredictability, or the constant negotiation of their own needs downward, The choice to stay single rather than risk that peace isn't selfishness. It's self-knowledge. The important nuance here is that there's a difference between protecting genuine peace and hiding inside a comfortable numbness. We'll come back to that distinction. But the peace itself? It's real. And treating it as something worth guarding is not a character flaw. Reason 3. They've watched the patterns up close. The third reason is sociological as much as personal. Older men have been observers of relationships, their own and others, for a long time. And what they've watched has shaped their risk assessment in ways that are hard to ignore. The divorce statistics in most Western countries are well known and haven't improved meaningfully in decades. Roughly 40 to 50% of first marriages end in divorce, and the rates are higher for second and third marriages. Less discussed but equally relevant is the research on who initiates divorce. Multiple large-scale studies, including a frequently cited 2015 study in the American Sociological Review, have found that women initiate approximately 70% of divorces in heterosexual marriages, with the figure rising to around 90% in college-educated populations. Older men who've watched friends and colleagues go through divorce proceedings, who've seen the financial, legal, and emotional aftermath up close, carry this information consciously or unconsciously into their own decision-making. This isn't anti-woman, it's risk-informed. A man evaluating whether to make a major, legally binding commitment to another person is doing exactly what any rational actor does, looking at the available data and asking what the realistic outcomes look like. What this leads to isn't a blanket refusal of commitment. It leads to significantly higher standards for what would justify that commitment. The question shifts from "do I like her enough?" to "is there genuine long-term alignment here, in values, in how we handle conflict, in what we each want this to look like in a decade?" Those are harder questions. They take longer to answer. And men who are asking them seriously will appear, from the outside, to be simply unwilling to commit, when in reality they're unwilling to commit prematurely. Reason 4. The modern dating environment is genuinely difficult. The fourth reason is environmental, and it's worth naming plainly. The infrastructure of modern dating is, by most honest assessments, not well designed for people who want depth. Dating apps, which now mediate the majority of romantic introductions in many demographics, are built on an attention economy model. They are designed, at the architectural level, to maximize engagement with the platform, not to maximize the probability of meaningful connection. Sociologist Sherry Tuckle, in her research on how digital environments shape human behavior, describes a phenomenon she calls the flight from conversation, the way that the availability of curated, low-stakes digital interaction has made the vulnerability required for genuine intimacy feel increasingly uncomfortable and unfamiliar. For older men who remember courtship before algorithms, the contrast is striking. The signal-to-noise ratio on most dating platforms heavily favors noise. Conversations that go nowhere. Profiles that represent a performance rather than a person. The strange dynamic of trying to communicate depth and character through a medium optimized for superficiality. Add to this the broader cultural moment, in which the expectations placed on men in relationships are both higher and less clearly defined than perhaps any previous generation, and you get a dating environment that genuinely asks a lot of people who are already cautious. None of this is insurmountable. Meaningful relationships are still being built. But the headwinds are real, and a man who says navigating this doesn't feel worth it to me right now is making a reasonable assessment of his environment, not a pathological one. Reason 5. They know their own value more clearly. The fifth reason is more internal, and it's one that tends to surprise people when they hear it framed this way. Many older men are staying single because they've finally, genuinely, stopped underselling themselves. For much of their lives, through their 20s and into their 30s, many men operated from a position of romantic insecurity. The dating market of that period did not favor them. They were still becoming. And the gap between what they felt they had to offer and what they perceived women were seeking created a pattern of pursuing too hard, investing too fast, and accepting treatment that didn't reflect their actual worth. By their 40s, something has shifted. They've built things. They've developed genuine competence, emotional stability, and financial groundedness. They've become, in the truest sense, a person of substance. And that substance has made them, in the dating market, genuinely more sought after than they've ever been. Paradoxically, this increase in desirability can produce the opposite of what you'd expect, not an eagerness to capitalize on it, but a new and quite careful selectivity. A man who spent years being chosen last doesn't suddenly become reckless when the dynamic reverses. He becomes deliberate. He asks, is this person choosing me, or is this person choosing what I represent? That's a sophisticated question. And it leads to a willingness to wait, to stay single, until the answer is clearly the former. Reason 6, the honest one, sometimes it's avoidance. Now here's the reason most conversations like this one skip entirely, because it's uncomfortable, and because it complicates the narrative. Not every older man who is single because he's wise, selective, or at peace. Some are single because something in them is genuinely closed. Because old wounds haven't been processed. Because the vulnerability required for real intimacy feels more dangerous than the loneliness that comes without it. Attachment researchers, particularly the work of Mary Ainsworth and later Kim Bartholomew, have documented a style of relating they call dismissive avoidant attachment, a pattern in which people have learned, usually through early experience, that depending on others is unsafe. That the solution to the pain of rejection or loss is to simply stop needing. To invest in self-sufficiency so thoroughly that connection stops feeling necessary. A man in this pattern can look, from the outside, remarkably like a man who is healthily single. He's calm. He's productive. He has his life together. But underneath the order, there's a wall, and the wall isn't discernment. It's defense. The distinction matters because one of these paths leads somewhere and the other is a very comfortable dead end. Healthy solitude is chosen from a place of fullness. You could be in a relationship, but you're genuinely satisfied without one right now, and you're open to the right one when it appears. Avoidant solitude is maintained from a place of self-protection. You tell yourself you're being selective, but you're actually just making sure no one gets close enough to hurt you. If you're watching this and you're not sure which category you're in, that uncertainty itself is worth paying attention to. The honest question isn't why aren't the right women appearing? It's what would I actually do if one did?